Hello, it's Scott Picking, and I want to bring you this weekly wealth insight. I want to combine last week's wealth insight with one from a couple of previous weeks. And I had a lot of amazing feedback from last week's wealth insight, so thank you very much. So what was wealth? Last week's one was whatever you do, make sure you do your best. How you do something is how you do everything. And the other one that I want to talk about is how do you increase the amount of money you have in your life, and ultimately it's about adding more value. So let's take a real life story. I was telling stories last week and clearly that appealed to people. So I went to London at the age of 21. It was January 1999. I just finished my BSc Construction Management, which is an honours degree. I'd cum lauded it. And I went to London. I was like any other university student. I think I knew everything. And I thought I'd be CEO of, a big international property development company within probably 6 months. And it was a very humbling experience when I turned up in London because I couldn't get a job. And, I started out as a barman and, whatever. But the very first job I actually got was a sweeper on a construction site. So, and it's quite a funny story because at my 21st, which had literally been like a couple of weeks earlier, my father had told a story of a person that had gone and done a degree just like mine and went to his first job. And he said to the boss man, what should I do? And the guy said, well, go grab a broom. And the kid turned around and said to, the boss, well, hang on, but I've got a degree. And the boss said, well, what, don't you know how to use a broom? And it was really weird because my father couldn't have organized this, but the universe organized this. Because when I turned up in London, my very first job was, a laborer on a construction site. And believe it or not, my very first job was sweeping a construction site. And it blew me away, and I was, mortified, and it really humbled me, and it really didn't do wonders to my ego, and yet my logic was do your best. Whatever you do, do your best. I remember my uncle's comments, always whatever you do, just do your best. How you do something is how you do everything, and equally how can you add more value? And so I figured out a way that where the average laborer would just sweep, that's all they would do. And I was employed, I can't even remember now, 8 or 10 hours a day. I figured out a way it was actually just a big house in Wimbledon. I figured out a way to sweep the entire thing in, a couple of hours. And eventually after, a week, I got it down to, like an hour or two. And I kept going back to the boss man and going like, dude, like I need more work. I'm bored out of my mind. And he would go, no, but you've just been employed to be a laborer. That's all you're here to do. And I was like, I need more. So within 2 weeks, I actually got promoted. And I became a site manager, or like a junior site manager. I was like probably way down the stream. Anyway, I actually stayed with that company and I grew with that company. I was with them for 5 years. I managed to double my salary 5 times in 5 years. And the way that I did that was consistently looking. My next job was to order concrete. And again, that's what your job was. That's all you did was order concrete. And you go out every day and you'd go to the site and you'd order, figure out the maths. And again, in the beginning, it takes a bit of time, but after a while, I was literally pacing it out. I could do the calculations in like half an hour. I'd order the concrete. And I went to my boss. I was like, dude, seriously, like, I can't do this. This is killing me. Like, I need more. And so he's like, but we've only hired you to do concrete. And I was like, well, I need more. And so then I got steel. And, steel, again, people were employed. That's all they were supposed to do on site was do steel. Now I was doing concrete and steel. And then I was like, no, come on, I need more. And ultimately I became site manager. I became second in charge on site. And the project was 11 weeks behind. It had only been going about 20 weeks and it was already 11 weeks behind with massive penalties. And we worked, weekends, we worked late nights, but we managed to pull that project back in line. And while I was doing that project, working those long hours, I went to my CEO of the company. It was a £100 million property development company in London, and said, look, I've always loved tech. I've got an undergrad degree, in specializing my dissertation in tech. I found a master's degree. I want to do a master's degree at London University, Greenwich campus. And anyway, so he said, great, we'll do it. And so I did a full-time master's on top of a full-time job. Now, I told you the story last week. Like, that's unheard of. In fact, it's actually illegal in England. Now, just to put in perspective, that was a 6 days a week full-time job when you're working on a construction site. So it's 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and I can't remember if it was 6 or 8 hours on a Saturday. And I still did a full-time master's on top of that, commuting in the evenings, working weekends. It was a tough time. Anyway, I cum laude that master's degree. And the moment I finished, I went back to my CEO and I said, right, now I'm qualified. I was 23, 24 years old. And he said, well, we need a group IT manager. And so I was invited to effectively the board level of the company. I wasn't offered a board position, but I was seated at the board, looking after the running of the IT department across the entire company, putting an ERP system, which is an enterprise resource planning system, across the entire company. And that's pretty much the story. That's how I doubled my salary 5 times in 5 years, and every single time just trying to do my absolute best. How you do something is how you do everything, and equally it's all about adding value. And the more you add value, the more money you put in your bank account. And ironically, I resigned. I had to set up IPS, International Property Solutions. At the time, I was given an offer for my salary was about, sure, I've got to do the maths now. It was probably 3 or 4 times my final salary. So I was on about £50,000 a year, my final salary, and I got offered well over £200,000, which was a massive decision to make, because I could have a very cushy job on £200,000, or I could go start my company and quite frankly be bankrupt. But I knew at the age of 25 I always wanted to go on my own, and that I believe that I could add a lot more value to people, through building a company, than by effectively implementing ERP systems into middle-sized and large companies. And so, and that's the journey I took, at the age of 25. And over the last 15 years, I've passionately and purposely been trying to marry together the property industry and the technology industry, trying to empower more people, trying to give more people access to property. And I believe we're a long way on that vision, in terms of the empowering the 99% to be able to invest like the top 1% in quality real estate safely and simply, and using technology. And, so maybe that's just a little story for you, and hopefully it's a much longer Wealth Insight today. I apologize. But I wanted to share with you a real life story of how you really truly can, whatever you do, how you do something is how you do everything. And it all started with a construction site. I could have been lazy. I could have sat around like the other construction workers and, quite tried to hide in the corners and turn up with a hangover and whatever else. But we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if that's the case. And equally, I could have just done my job and worked for 8 hours a day and got paid my £5 an hour or whatever the hell I got then. And again, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So hopefully that story is a bit of inspiration for you, that today, tomorrow, next week, next month, we're about to slide into Q3. We're 6 months now away from 2020 and an entire new decade. And, I challenge you to ask yourself some questions. How are you doing, everything in your life? Are you doing it to the best of your ability, and how can you add more value? So that's Scott Piggins signing out. If you enjoy this Wealth Insight, subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends. We want to empower 1 billion people. We can't do it on our own. And with 6 months, until the start of the new decade, we truly want to empower as many people as we possibly can. And I need your help. And so I leave you with one thought. I heard it from Tony Robbins yesterday morning. You're really left with a decision. And the decision is, are you going to live with the pain of discipline, or are you going to live with the pain of regret? That's your choice. Scott Piggins signing out. See you next week. Cheers.